And we're live. So this is Titan Talk 8, Bobbie and Ryan. Well, I'll let you introduce yourselves. So tell me a little bit about yourselves. Coach, go ahead, Coach. Introduce me.
Yeah, so I guess I met yourself via being on kind of like the UCLan campus. I was doing my strength and conditioning undergrad. I've not long finished my master's by research. And yeah, I run basically like an online coaching business with this one. And we're both about to go and do our PGCE with the thoughts to basically go into some lecturing alongside our coaching as well. So career-wise, that's me, I guess. And then I also know you from obviously trying to strangle you. So obviously we've both got a shared passion for martial arts, and I very much like that about you. So I guess that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, and Bobbie, the powerlifting champion. Slash everything academic slash so on and so forth.
So yeah, I compete in powerlifting. Yeah, that's my main sport. Has been probably for 10 years. Dabbled in a bit of weightlifting there as well. I'm similar to Ryan in that I did my undergrad degree at UCLan. That's where I met yourself, T. That's where I met Rye. I've recently just finished my master's by research. Finally had the approval of my amendments, so that's awesome. So I can officially say after 2.5 years I have a master's. And yeah, I'm looking to do my PGCE. I love coaching. I've been doing coaching, well, probably since I was about 13. And I'll always do that. And I'd like to do, again, lecturing, kind of college tutoring as well, like alongside coaching. That would be my ideal kind of life balance situation.
Yeah. And what's interesting as well is we actually, whenever we first met, we were all kind of into weightlifting. And I was, pretty much an amateur at the time. And you had actually been, well, both of you had been at a pretty high level in Olympic weightlifting. Bobbie, I think you were in the national team, weren't you?
I was in something called the Olympic Development Squad. So all that means is you basically, it's like a national squad, and then from there, if I was to have continued with it, you then go to the Olympic trials and various other things. So that was around the Olympics 2016 when I was part of that kind of squad.
Yeah. And Ryan, you competed, didn't you, as well? And your lifts were pretty solid from what
they weren't bad considering my elbows don't lock out. I competed at nationals, and I got, what did I get? I got 5th in my weight division, which was hilariously 77 kilo. Considering I'm 6 foot is.
I don't know how you ever managed that, to be honest. That's a feat in and of itself, really.
Truly don't know how I did either. Yeah. Everyone else in my flight was about half a foot shorter than me, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's brilliant. I mean, you have literally done well. Bobbie, I think your master's by research was on Olympic weightlifting. How does the anthropometrics kick in when it comes to that? Does it make a difference if you're taller or shorter? Is it easier? Is it harder?
It certainly does make some form of difference, especially when you're looking at kind of the ratios between kind of femur length, torso length, and things like that. So how like the whole kinetic chain comes together, and how you basically move. The one thing that I found really interesting was it can impact the direction that you produce force from the start position. And then as a result can impact what direction the bar path's going in. So kind of, it's like almost like a triangle. So you've got like the force of how you push into the floor essentially, how you're put together, and then how you move. It's like kind of like that triad that I tried my best to unpick and describe as concisely as possible throughout my thesis, but it's incredibly complex with lots of layers.
That's fascinating. I actually have a copy of your thesis, and to my shame, I still haven't gone through it.
I haven't looked at
laziness, to be honest. but no, it's definitely something that I need to read through, because it's crazy how kind of we found that kind of passion whenever we met. We were all into the same thing then.
Yeah,
even as time's gone on, especially when you, Ryan, was kind of ended up in the same thing, jiu-jitsu and everything. It's funny how it's progressed over time, and it's crazy to think like to where you guys are at now quality wise. I mean, I still think, fucking hell, you guys actually worked on doing another strength camp up in that CrossFit gym. You know what I mean? It boggles the mind sometimes now to think back to, that you did a bit of work then like that, compared to some of the stuff that you are doing now on a one-to-one basis and so on. But I actually remember, I remember you teaching me some stuff on the Olympic weightlifting, Ryan. I think you'd actually give me a cue for the snatch, and I still remember it to this day. It was, imagine like somebody's pulling your skeleton out of your body straight up. Like you actually compared it to a Mortal Kombat finishing move. And I was like, oh, Jesus, that's actually makes real sense. And ever since that, I got a lot more vertigo on my pulls.
Yeah.
A lot of hip thrusting at the time.
Yeah, some people think I thought you would like resonate with that kind of cue, because like, some people say like, strong hips and things like that. And with you, I just thought if I gave you a body position to try and emulate, like you'd be able to think about that quite well, and kind of, because I feel like you're quite a kinesthetic person.
100%.
So I thought that might work well, yeah.
Yeah, I only learned that like at uni, that I was a kinesthetic learner. No wonder I didn't do that great in school. Everything's, auditory and so on. Yeah, it's funny, and even like from a probably end up why I ended up a coach, but my best form of communication, and even whenever I'm trying to teach any kind of mindset, it always comes back to something. I kind of relate it back to something physical, just because for me that's like the easiest basis to understand it from.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, I'd say there's quite a lot of kinesthetic guys out there.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember realizing with one of my clients, Joe, it was Olympic weightlifting, and I was giving him visual cues. The visual cues were just doing nothing. And I was like, right, okay, like, how can I get this through to him? I was like, squeeze your quads, boom, just had it.
Yeah.
Just a simple cue change, but I started to pick it up on things like that then at that point. Yeah. So, give me a little bit more background, because you were very, very humble in your backgrounds. To be fair, Bobbie, you competed recently, didn't you?
I competed.
As in before this bloody virus.
Yeah, before I was so lucky that before lockdown, literally the week before, I went to nationals in York. That was my last competition. So yeah, that was really cool. Qualified me to go to Worlds. Unfortunately, both Worlds and European this year won't be going ahead. So my next comp is, hopefully, if things go to plan, obviously we don't know in this very unprecedented times, at the end of November. It's called the ABS Pro Show, and that's in Dublin. So that'd be really cool to go and do that. Yeah.
Some big lifters going for that.
Some real big lifters, yeah. So there's a lady called Maria Hitti. I really hope I'm pronouncing her name right. She came first at Worlds last year in Sweden in my weight class. So that'd be really cool to share the platform with her again. And there's just an incredible amount of world-class athletes going, like traveling from Canada, America, across Europe, etc.
And it's something that I'm always quite interested in regards to powerlifting. I think, Ryan, we've had a good couple of conversations about this, about how much can you kind of maximize powerlifting whilst not giving up too much else in your fitness. And Ryan, actually, you'll probably be in the best position of all to even tackle that as well. Obviously, if anybody doesn't know already, guys, Ryan's actually Bobbie's partner and also her coach. So I'm going to go into that relationship and see how that works out. Because I think that's a fascinating. It's fascinating how you do it and do it so well. It really is. But how does, powerlifting, because I guess the strength demands of powerlifting. You've got the sheer amount of time that it requires to build the muscle, and obviously the maturity as well within the muscle.
Yeah,
it's going to take years to develop, and the tendon strength and everything that's associated. How does that impact then training for other things? What's your thoughts on that?
So I got just a personal insight into this. Like prior to me starting to try and balance some jiu-jitsu with my powerlifting training, I would have maybe had a bit of a different opinion. But basically, I think people can do a little bit more than they think and still be really good. Now, if you're trying to be the very best in the world, like this one over here, chances are you're probably not going to, do other things that are going to either potentially cause you risk of injury or anything like that, or B, eat into your recovery, your recoverability. So, you're not going to see Bobbie run any 5Ks or do jiu-jitsu.
Hold on a minute. I did in lockdown. Thank you very much.
For a little challenge.
I did. I had to partially run and partially walk, and I had an immense amount of resistance to do it. But I did it. So yeah, sorry, carry on.
Fair play.
So you're certainly not going to go and do jiu-jitsu and have people crank on your joints or anything like that. But obviously, I wanted to. I basically found out that I couldn't really pursue powerlifting in a competitive sense because of my elbows. They don't fully lock out.
Yeah, it was the same issue with the Olympic lifting, wasn't it?
Yeah,
basically. Actually, going to a full overhead squat, it was like a power snatch, and even then, the elbows weren't fully locked in.
Yeah. So. But basically, I started off with kind of like between 1 to maximum 3 sessions per week alongside my powerlifting, and I was actually able to still make progress in the powerlifting. Yes, it started becoming a little bit harder, but like I was pleasantly surprised, because jiu-jitsu is pretty intense. And then the more I did jiu-jitsu, 4, 5, 6 sessions a week, then yeah, it really hits. You start not only from a time point of view, but obviously just like recovery becomes a very an impossible task at that point. So yeah, there's a certain give and take, and it depends on your goals. But if you're looking to do powerlifting at a decent level, and you want to go for a hike on the weekend, honestly, I think that doesn't impact you anywhere near as much as maybe some people would have you believe.
Yeah.
I think that there seems to be this balance where actually in some ways, I think one of the conversations, Ryan, you were saying it actually enhances it. So the fact that your recoverability was kind of better and your cardio was better from trying to strangle me, was, because that was higher, cardio was up, you were able to recover better from powerlifting, because of the vascular system and so on. But so I'd say, like you mentioned, and obviously CrossFit athletes have done a damn good job of combining some of these elements. Yeah. They have done a serious job because some of them are fucking fantastically strong. Was being, ridiculously fit and hit the 5 mile, the 5 miles in a pretty quick time and so on, or 5Ks and all that. So I don't know. I'd say there's probably a hell of a lot you can do more than you realize. I think we're more robust than we probably give ourselves credit for.
Definitely. And I think going back to the CrossFit athletes, some of them guys, some of them are honestly could compete at a national level at Olympic weightlifting and do very well.
Many do.
If they just slightly bias their training a bit more towards the Olympic lifting and took the foot off the pedal off the CrossFit a little bit, who knows where they'd be, So yeah, like you can definitely do more than you think. And I think over time that this is a thing as well. Like I couldn't immediately jump into doing my normal powerlifting regimen and then add 3 jiu-jitsu sessions a week. And it's a take your foot off the powerlifting a little bit, add in the jiu-jitsu, and then gradually ramp both up to a point, and then you'll hit a ceiling where it starts to become difficult, but that ceiling might be a lot higher than you think. So
yeah, that's good. I think that's really positive for people out there with multiple interests to hear. Because I mean, I know I'm awful. I've got that many interests that I don't even have time to do them all. I have more interest than I've got anything else, So I can see even like something as silly as archery. Like I'm now, and this is how kind of obsessive I get with it. When I'm doing archery, I shoot both sides. Like no other archer does that, but I do because I don't want to imbalance my back. Like, this is the kind of this is the kind of thought processes that go on in my head, because I think, well, you know, because cause if you think about it, in combat sport, there's always going to be an imbalance. You know, probably going to kick more powerfully more often with your right leg, for example, in Muay Thai, or jiu-jitsu. You might. I know I pretty much always go to the left if I'm going for a takedown. Don't tell anybody else though. You know, it's just you have your preferences, like of where you go and what what side you're best and so on. So there's always going to be those imbalances. So wherever I can minimize that, I do try to do that. Plus, it's always cool to shoot with both hands.
We're very asymmetrical creatures by nature, I think. So yeah, like as and when you can, like, you know, definitely try and minimize the amount. But when you're doing something as dynamic as jiu-jitsu, where you're literally fighting someone and they're resisting, you know, you take them down however the hell you can.
Yeah, damn right.
Yeah,
definitely. So, when did you start the transition, Ryan, from like the lifting kind of? When did jiu-jitsu start? I know it was like 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago.
2017 November, so like
nearly 3 years.
It's closing in on 3 years now, yeah. But I will, for the first 12 months, I honestly did just, you know, some weeks absolutely no jiu-jitsu, and then some maybe 3. So I'll look at that first year as a very casual year. But then as the powerlifting, you know, as I realised that couldn't be competitive anymore, I slowly started doing my jiu-jitsu. My weight started coming down. I got better and better, and then, you know, some of the guys encouraged me to, you know, compete and do stuff like that, and I did really well. And now I've just kind of become a bit obsessed. Like I'm well and truly hooked. So the lifting is purely a supplement to the jiu-jitsu now. That's how I look at it.
Yeah.
You know, I still enjoy to lift, but honestly, if I don't lift in a week, that's not entirely shocking now.
Yeah. Yes.
It's rare, but occasionally when I have a really brutal week of jiu-jitsu, I don't even lift. So, yeah.
And do you find that whenever you do go back to the bar, because the numbers are usually a bit smaller, does the ego kick in? Is it like, no, come on, you can do more than this? Does that happen, or are you good at coaching yourself?
I was initially, there was a lot of resistance to like my numbers dropping, and I was really trying to, you know, keep them up high, and, you know, well, I can't let my squat drop below 180, like no way, and there's no way I'm deadlifting less than 220, like no. But now I care a lot less, to be honest. Like, I'm still strong, I can still lift some decent weight, but ultimately,
do you find like there's a kind of a point of diminishing returns in regards to strength when the carryover and crossover to things like jiu-jitsu?
Oh, 100%. I would still drop a bit of strength now for more cardio, which I've been training for something called the fan dance, which is like an SAS march in the Brecon Beacons. It's 24 kilometers with a loaded backpack. So myself and Matt Brown, who obviously you know as well, we've been training hard for that.
Nice.
So I've been running half marathons and stuff. So like my weight's been coming down with that as well. So that's another thing that's been, you know, making my lifting a bit harder to get in, because I've been sore as hell from that. So
it's been ages since I run anything like that, to be honest.
Yeah. It was humbling initially, but you can get good pretty quick.
Yeah, the thing about cardio I always found is it just comes back dead quick.
Yeah, a lot quicker than lifting.
Oh yeah, I mean the issue with strength is that, you know, it takes so bloody long to build and it takes such a short time to lose.
Yeah.
Because I don't think, I mean, probably naturally, if you think of our base level, don't really need to be that strong, do we?
No.
But fitness wise and so on, I think like, and even the structural, you know, the mechanisms by which it comes about, it's even different. It's it actually happens much faster, doesn't it, to get cardiorespiratory fitness mechanically than it does to get strength gains.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got 8 weeks of neuromuscular fucking adaptations before you even get into any of the mechanical stuff. But yeah, that's interesting. So I'm finally going to ask it. How does this relationship work with you guys? You run a business together. You know, you're a couple and you're a coach and athlete. How does that all function? I'm interested in this
I
insight.
think it functions pretty harmoniously, to be fair. I think we're obviously as the athlete and the coach athlete relationship. I don't think we've ever had any issues. It's never, for me personally, it's never been a problem. Like, because I think I respect Ryan so much as a coach. And sometimes I just let myself almost be the athlete and take my coach's mindset out of it, because I can be very analytical. And as a result, sometimes I just need to listen to Ryan, which I think is important for any coach-athlete relationship. Sometimes you can get very emotional. I know I can be anyway. Some athletes might disagree. I can get very emotional, and you can sometimes get blurred by that as well, especially when I'm looking at my own technique and doing my own technique analysis. I might see something that's not there, and Ryan can just come in with the rational bomb and just be like, no, it's literally fine. So I think that works pretty well. I'm interested to see, I guess, obviously, as the coach, what do you think?
I think even before Ryan says anything, like that's quite impressive that you're able to take yourself out of that coaching, take the coaching hat off, so to speak. That's pretty hard to do.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
From my perspective, like coaching someone who you're in a relationship who didn't have her coaching credentials could often be problematic for a lot of people, I think. Because because it's the person that you love and you've got emotional ties to them. Like, maybe if you were paying them for their service, like, you'd be like, I'm paying for your expertise, I'm going to take that on board. But when a romantic relationship is involved, then that obviously complicates things a little bit. But from my point of view, it only works because of her. Like, I don't do much else different than what I do with any other athlete. I don't have to talk to any different. In fact, it arguably enhances it, because I can actually be even more real with her and around the edges even less, because she's so good at just removing her ego from the situation, removing her coaching mindset or whatever. And she can literally just, she knows I've got her best interest at heart. She knows I care about her. But I suppose when we do discuss things, like we really do, you maybe wouldn't guess that we're in a relationship. You'd just be like, oh, that's a coach and an athlete. Like,
That is pretty fascinating. It's probably down to, I mean, both you guys, I would say, are very high in what I would call emotional intelligence. So your self-awareness is high, and I think that comes part and parcel with the coaching. I think as you get into coaching, it kind of, in order for you to analyze someone else, you've got to be very good at analyzing yourself, because you've got to take your own bias out of it first, or to try and mitigate the bias. I mean, there's no way to take it out completely, but to mitigate your own bias is one of the first processes, and to do that, you got to be self-aware. So I think I can see, like, I mean, it works because you guys are both great coaches, and so you're able to, like, Bobbie's able to understand where you're coming from right away as a coach, not just, you know what I mean, rather than, like, sometimes if you've never coached before, there's no way to kind of understand sometimes where a coach is coming from properly. It's kind of one of them things that, like, a lot of times I've noticed with my clients, it's in hindsight, and they go, that's what you were doing. But probably you catch on a lot quicker, Bobbie. It's probably a case of, like, okay, I understand where he's going with this now. You know?
Most of the time. Sometimes I still have to ask questions, for sure, because Ryan, I do believe Ryan understands me as a lifter, especially when we first started working together, more than I understand myself as a lifter. So, like, I enjoy having conversations with him to see why is it that you've done this way for me as an athlete. So I do find that really interesting.
There's definitely been times when we have to have difficult conversations as well. It's not like we just
it's not a coast, is it?
No, like there's definitely times where my intimate knowing of her just as a person, like has maybe influence what I do or say, more so than it would if it was just some athlete that I see twice a week or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that I've had to learn to do is, and it's hard, obviously, because I care about her and I want nothing but success for her, but I have to like emotionally detach a little bit from her success or failure.
Yeah, from the outcome, essentially.
To a certain extent, yeah, because if, like, as an example, like I see coaches that like for example at a powerlifting competition, and that they might be in a the lifter might be in a relationship with the person who's handling them or whatever, and if things aren't going well, because both parties, obviously the lifter's very invested in their own success, but obviously the person romantically involved with them is obviously
invested as well.
Yeah, like it can often cause, when things are not going right, or if they don't have like proper methods of communication, it can, if things don't go well, it can really break down. If they have a great day, then great, happy days. It's the highest of highs, but like it can really quickly down spiral if they don't, if the coach just can't keep his or her head on their shoulders, no matter what's happening, and just be,
it's an interesting point, actually. Do you feel that the responsibility lies with the coach, athlete, or both? How does that work in regards to keeping your head in that situation?
Keeping.
That's a good question.
I like, from my point of view, I put a lot of responsibility on myself to be the calm, relaxing figure that I think a coach should be in a very
competitive, high-tense environment.
Yeah, basically, I agree with that. Yeah, for sure.
No matter what's happening, if she's in, because I've had to coach her. Obviously, I care about her well-being. I've had to coach her when she's been in an immense amount of pain and make decisions based on her goals of her wanting to get to international competition or whatever. Where basically I need to put a weight on the bar that I know is going to really hurt her to lift it. Like I know it's going to kill. She's going to be in tears. But I've had to do that because I know that if I didn't, ultimately she would be gutted and she would regret it. But
in that scenario, is there any long-term damage to be done, or is it just short-term pain?
Well, that's what I'm assessing at the time. I'm like, is this lift worth it, or is this going to be her in a big
career-ending type stuff?
And that comes from a long time of understanding her body and like the pains that she experiences both in training and
externally.
So it's all a pretty complex mix of like the experiences that I have with the athlete and the relationship that we develop.
Definitely. From my experience as a coach, I really resonate with what you say, because whenever I go to a competition, I can get if I let myself, I could probably get very emotionally invested into what the athlete's feeling at the time. I feel like I can, like if an athlete is hyped, I can get hyped with them. If they're crying, I can cry with them. And as a coach, I've got to try and pull myself away from that. And I think I said to my athlete, one of the first competitions I did and I coached, I said, I need to be the yin to your yang. I need to be calm and collected and not get emotionally invested into how you're feeling, because we need to have that balance. If we're both frantic and like, I don't know what to do, really nervous, and we're not going to get anywhere. So it is about that. And sometimes at a competition, especially at nationals, there was a bit of panic at the beginning of the day. But luckily, Mr. Rational Mind helped me out. So I definitely, I think there's a lot of responsibility from the coach on that perspective.
I think even if you did think that, say, the athlete did carry some responsibility, I think that the coaching prerogative, pretty much, I know it's the same for you guys, is to just basically take all the responsibility. Because as a coach, that's what you're kind of there for. You're there to make sure they get the job done. And for themselves, to make themselves happy about it. And whatever means necessary in some cases. Especially in a competitive environment like that.
definitely.
On the other end of the scale, though, like I actually remove myself of all responsibility in terms of the actual outcome.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
So in other words, like I will do everything in my power to make you go out there and lift as well as you can.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a nightmare and like it just does not go well for you, like it just like it is what it is, and to coach you the best on the day, I can't.
You can't lift the bar
like
forward.
I've had lifters who, their mindset is just like, oh, I messed that lift up technically. I can definitely do more. Let's put more weight on the bar. And I have to be a realist and just be like, with all due respect, I didn't see a technical error there. It just didn't look like you had it, or like that looked a lot tougher than we initially expected. We're going to have to reduce our expectations. And telling that to a lifter who, has got these real high hopes of this particular number on that day or whatever, or is in a battle with another lifter for a certain position is hard. But ultimately, your job as a coach in a powerlifting setting anyway is to get the most weight on the bar that day, the biggest total, like no matter what. So it's like in that way you've got to remove a bit of responsibility.
Because ultimately it's the athlete who's lifting the weight at the end of the day, whether they are successful or whether they unfortunately don't make the lift, and that is down to the athlete. So I always say that to my athlete, whether they like if they come back to me and they're like, oh, thank you so much, I was like, I didn't do anything, I just helped you lifted the weight. Like I was just stood on the sideline cheering you on, and I really try and enforce that in my athlete, like that it's you're the one who's actually lifting that barbell. I'm not. I'm just here like to try and help you through the day or help you through a training cycle, etc. And in that respect as well, if you're talking about kind of athlete responsibility, there is also an element of an athlete learning to control their emotions as well, learning how to deal with failure, and things like that. And I think through the journey of through coaching and however long you've been coaching an athlete, that's part of the learning process. It's not just here's a training program, go and kill yourself 24/7 and do the best you can, blah blah blah. It's it's very multifactorial in that there's a lot of mindset things that can help the athlete in training and on a competition day. So there needs to be some balance between both athlete and coach.
Yeah, definitely. I think, ultimately, in some way, shape, or form, I think it kind of falls back to the coach in order to kind of instill that within the relationship. But I feel like definitely from an athlete perspective, you've got to have the buy-in. You've got to have that startup energy, or whatever it is. You've got to have the buy-in from the athlete. If the athlete's not buying into it, I know from talking to somebody in the first instance if I'm going to work with them or not, because some people just they're not going to be a right fit. They're not. They're coming to me for something that they just want fixed, and that's not how it works. It'd be great if it did, but it doesn't. So yeah, I fully get that. I guess in some way, shape, or form, it's that learning to process your emotions and learning to kind of be coached and take the ego out of it from an athlete perspective. I think even some of that sometimes, as long as the relationship started, as long as the journey started, then it's up to the coach to kind of make that point to them, I think, and say, look, here's what you need to do. You need to be able to take this criticism, you need to take this loss, you need to take this shit, and then come back stronger from it, not use it as a stick to beat yourself with.
Yeah, exactly. That's the easy option.
Exactly. It's so much easier to beat yourself down and then not have to rise up again, and people don't see it that way. People, people are very quick to kind of put themselves down and then kind of almost feel like a moral high ground for it.
Yeah.
Like some kind of weird situation where they go, oh, I've really tried that and it just wasn't good enough, or I did my best and all this stuff. And you think, well,
but did you?
Yeah, if the outcome, if the outcome that you desired and you wanted like that bad and it's so important to you, then there shouldn't be like that end. There shouldn't be that point, well, I've done my best and I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Unless there's something, there obviously this is not you can't blanket wash every scenario. Every scenario is individual, and you know, someone ends up in a wheelchair, they're not going to do the 100-meter sprint, are they? So it, you know, but they still could compete on a capacity in some way, shape, or form, and that's what, you know, it's that resilience, isn't it? It's just teaching people that. And probably more than anything in the coaching process is massively important.
Definitely.
Yeah. Good ramble anyway. That was a fascinating insight, really, into how you work, and it's pretty much he's segmented in a way that benefits you, whilst also intertwining it in a way that's beneficial. You kind of take the best of both worlds. Because of your intimate knowledge of Bobbie, you're able to train her better. And, you know, it's kind of a coach's dream, really, to have all the knowledge of what the fuck's going on in your athlete's life.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I've had athletes landing to me, you know, I can remember one situation in particular where a guy come in and he just actually witnessed the person die that day. They come in to train, and I'm like, what are you doing? I didn't find this out until halfway through the session. He was lifting shit. And I was like, man, you're lifting shit. What the fuck's going on? Like, it's not your lifting. You never lift this shit. What's up? And he's like, you know, we had to go outside the gym and we had a talk and everything. I was like, what the fuck are you doing here? Why did you not just call me and cancel the session?
Yeah.
But, you know, so it's because you have that insight, you can kind of get ahead of those things.
Yeah, I can make just exponentially more informed coaching decisions. Also, like at this point, she's the athlete I've been working with the longest. So like, we've just got I've got so much training history to draw upon.
Yeah.
Like but working on your mindset and stuff like that as probably, obviously your body's one thing. Like, you know, she came from a place of like, you know, a lot of pain and injury and stuff like that. So that was a long process of working her back to the point. She always showed tons of potential, but we were never actually sure if she was going to ever be able to fully express it on a platform, because her body, you know, really wasn't compliant for quite some time.
Would you go into that, if you don't mind? I mean, I don't. If you don't want to share details of that, no problem. But if you would like to, could you just explain what happened basically? I know it started with Olympic weightlifting. I know we've talked about it, but I don't want to say too much. I'll let you share what you're comfortable with.
Yeah, no worries. I'm comfortable to talk about the whole thing. I won't go into too much detail because it's a long process and your listeners will be falling asleep. But yeah, you're right. It started in Olympic weightlifting. As I say, I was part of the Olympic development squad, and I believe it probably started way before then. But I basically had a mindset of, if I feel pain, I'm going to ignore it, and I wouldn't even like think of it as pain. And essentially it got to a point where the best way of describing it is I had chronic tightness throughout my entire body. I had a lot of lower back pain. I had like my hips were dead tight. I was born with, from what I understand, something called lordosis. So I had a very excessive lumbar curve ever since I was a baby. I also have flat feet. So all of which had played into what kind of happened, from what I understand. And basically I was lifting and I had very poor control over what happened to my body, essentially. So the best way of describing it is, when I remember one of the first 70 kilo cleans I did, I somehow managed to land the clean and both knees collapsed inwards and touched the floor. And I basically ended up on my bum with my knees on the floor as well, if people can imagine what that looked like. So I had very, very poor control of almost like where my body was, if that makes sense. And a year's worth of lifting with that kind of limited control meant that I feel like my back muscles were just
taking everything
far too much. My core was weak. I had a lot of weaker areas and a lot of other areas that were just working too hard. We could delve into the layers of that so much, but yeah, so essentially that's where it started. So then I came out of Olympic weightlifting because I was in a lot of pain. I I thought foam rolling was the best thing since sliced bread. I was foam rolling every single body part, even between lifts. And then we had an Olympic weightlifting session together, and I don't think we were a couple at this point either, or we just started going out, and I was crying whilst I was jerking because I was in so much pain. And kind of got to a point where I was like, I really need to like look at myself here, like what's going on, pull myself out of the Olympic development squad. We believed that I potentially had chronic fatigue syndrome. I had a lot of symptoms that went along with that. I spent a year basically doing full-time college. I was self-employed full-time. I was training 6 days a week, 4 hours a day, and only sleeping 4 hours a day. That was on average. And I was also trying to keep a 52 kilo body weight, which was not easy. So yeah, there was just a bit of a shambles that whole year. And then my first year of uni came about, and that's kind of where the rehab process began, really. And then lots of things have happened to get to where I am today. It's been a long process, but an incredibly rewarding process that I've learned so much from, about myself, about my body, about lots of things. So that's kind of where I am.
Yeah, and what then? I mean, why the switch from Olympic weightlifting over to powerlifting? Was that was the back a factor, and not just your back, but the whole system? Was that a factor in why you chose a different sport?
I think so, yeah. And also, I don't know if you'd agree with this, but I think my relationship with Olympic weightlifting was quite tainted.
Yeah.
So throughout my rehab process, I can't really say how long that lasted for, but I was in my second year of uni, so this would have been into my second year of rehab. And I remember this like it was yesterday. I remember being in the gym, attempting to do Olympic weightlifting, failed a lift, which you do in Olympic weightlifting. It occurs very, very often. And I couldn't deal with that. And there was lots of different factors. And I basically thought to myself, like, what am I doing? Mm-hmm. And then in the back of my mind, I was thinking, do I go back to powerlifting? Because that's how I got into strength sports, was through powerlifting.
Oh, right.
With
you actually did it originally?
Yeah, so when I was 16, I started competing with BDFPA. So then I remember I wrote a pros and cons list for both sports, and it came down to was the fact that I loved powerlifting more. For myself personally, I loved the element of maximal strength and things like that. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, why I went back to powerlifting.
Tell me this, did Chris Edmondson have something to do with that pros and cons list?
No.
He loves his pros and cons list. Every time I talk to him, he's like, do a list.
Well, it's your suggestion, yeah. And from that, I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly, but apparently it was in the back of Ryan's mind for a long time that I should go back to powerlifting, but he never said anything to me until I asked him. And I remember saying, do you think I should go back to powerlifting? And then I can't remember exactly what you said.
I always just give my opinion and my rationale, but I never try and influence your decision.
Yeah, exactly.
It's your decision.
And then that was basically what he said, it's your decision. And then I was like, we said, write a pros and cons list of each sport, etc., and then go from there. And it just became abundantly clear where my heart really was within powerlifting, and for what powerlifting is in terms of, as I said, the maximal strength. But it didn't take away the love of my weightlifting, hence why I spent so long still studying it, I still coach it, and I think it's an amazing sport.
Yeah, it's just not the one you want to do. You want to focus on powerlifting.
Yeah,
that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
You had the blinkers on with the Olympic weightlifting of the Olympics. Like it was the big grandiose goal
of the Olympics.
The Olympic stage that I think was the driving factor, and not necessarily the love of what she was doing. Yeah. Not that she didn't enjoy the list, but you know what I mean. I think that was the main driving factor. Whereas with the powerlifting, I can
actually relate to that quite a bit, because, and probably Ryan, maybe you can too, because I know that we both did MMA in our teenage years, and we kind of started out in combat sports and then transitioned into Olympic weightlifting. If I'm right about you, I know that it happened to me because I very similar to yourself. I was training 6 hours a day, 6 days a week for MMA, and wasn't doing any S&C because we didn't even know S&C existed. Never mind that there was a coach for it. I wasn't doing any kind of loosening, any kind of looking after my body, looking at muscle imbalances, none of that. And one day I had my head on a wall, and brawling. It was boxing and wrestling. So I was shot on for takedown, had my head on the wall, boom, and I was like, I felt like I was paralyzed. I couldn't actually move. So it was terrifying. Long story short, I'm not going into details, but long story short, that was about a year properly to rehab, and then another year of getting strong again and realizing that I met a fantastic physio at the time who said, look, you need to start doing weight training, and you also need to start doing some yoga. So I did both those things. I didn't do any real combat stuff at all, and then I ended up finding Olympic weightlifting. I thought, oh fucking, this is class. These guys are strong and flexible. I want to do this, and it is a fascinating sport. And then I did it for a number of years and came to uni and all that. But I think I was pursuing that, and as much as I enjoyed it as a pastime, and all my friends were doing it, which was helpful in continuing my journey on it. And I'm glad I did it, but definitely my heart lies with the combat.
Yeah.
That's what really fires me up. By comparison. So I'd say, I don't know, Ryan, are you the same as that, or is that
yeah? I mean, my the combat stuff that I did prior to coming to uni and all that definitely was not as serious as yours. I wasn't in like an SPG style gym like you were, but I just basically had some Thai boxers that used to come to the gym and some jiu-jitsu guys, and we all used to just
have at it.
And they would teach me and so on, and I learned some basics, and that was about it for me. But jiu-jitsu, I'm a big fan of the UFC and just watching that and stuff, and once the powerlifting had kind of like reached just a bit of a natural conclusion for me, the jiu-jitsu just was quite appealing, and now I honestly, like, I've fallen in love with jiu-jitsu so much that like I am like seriously considering opening up like a school of my own, and like I really do like the idea of potentially teaching it all the time and stuff like that. But
mate, you should. You'd be fucking damn good at that. Because considering this, to put this in perspective, actually, and really to say that you should do that is, I'd done 6 or 7 years of MMA stuff, and then had 8 years off uni and Olympic weightlifting and so on, and then come back there after 8 years. And you'd think that I would have known a fair amount from that original stuff, but there was stuff that I was learning, like basic stuff that I hadn't picked up because I wasn't paying enough attention. And Ryan, you were like, you missed this part. Do it this way. So you've been teaching me, little bits actually since I've come back to jiu-jitsu in the same club. Every time I roll, I learn something new. So you definitely should do that, man.
Cheers, man.
That'd be cool.
The sharkiest wipeout in human history.
Yeah, I sneaked that one, to be fair. But I can't sneak anymore. I'm blue belt now, so I'm pretty much level playing field now.
Yeah.
Getting hammered by everybody else. I'm definitely gonna get hammered when we go back. So how's lockdown been? I've not asked you this yet because it's kind of over. Fuck, what's even going on? Who actually knows what's going on?
It's like a local lockdown coming in Preston.
Yeah, we don't know what's going on in Preston, Greater Manchester.
Was that just hype, or is that actually happening? Because I've seen a post about it, but I never know what to believe anymore.
I know. It seems like it could be happening, but yeah. I don't know how they're enforcing it or anything.
I'm not sure. I know that we had a message, I think it was on Monday or something, saying, like from the government on our phone, just a text message saying that we're saying to people, don't go into people's houses. I don't know if there's more, what's the word? Different kind of things going on in Greater Manchester and Blackburn, because apparently their infection rates went really high. I even heard, again, don't know how true this is, I listened to the radio, that the infection rates in Blackburn, which isn't too far from here, went up past where Leicester was. I don't know if that's, again, I don't know if I'm misinterpreting the information, etc. But who knows? We're just not sure.
There's no word of businesses closing down or anything like that.
No,
Again,
I've not heard anything like that.
Hopefully, I really hope that doesn't happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
The economy is already going to be.
Yes.
Half of Preston is small businesses and stuff, and they're not opening. Like, there's a lot of places in Preston that haven't reopened because the economy is just unfortunately not.
It's been pretty much dragged through the bushes, hasn't it, at the minute?
Because it's a student city as well, and the uni's been closed all year. That's where a lot of companies get their income from when they have an influx of students. They haven't had that.
That's another big problem. Is the uni is potentially not opening the campus for at least the rest of this year, but maybe the whole academic year. Chris was saying so. That could be massive. All the student accommodation. Like, what's going to happen with all that?
Yeah, it's not in the best place, I'd say, because it is a very, very much a student-run city, isn't it? Definitely. So, and they've obviously the uni as well. Within the past, you'll know this, T. They've built so many buildings, etc., etc. Trying to renovate the campus and all that, and it's just been, I guess, very poor timing with their funding because it's all basically gone into that from what I can see. So
so they'll not really have. They've built that huge engineering building out the front, haven't they?
Yeah, and obviously that's only been open since September. No one's bloody used it because of all this. Obviously, it's gone on. Yeah,
it's dead money, isn't it now? Really? They're not going to see any kind of. They're going to need money to keep going as well because people aren't going to be paying. Surely they're not going to charge the full tilt if they're not actually going and receiving the lectures. I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work.
No idea. God knows what's.
Half the students, as you probably know, half the students just go to uni for the actual uni life. They're not going for academics.
They can't do anything.
Some of the guys, we were lucky enough, and I think in sport, you do get a lot of motivated people in sport degrees.
Yeah.
But there definitely was the guys there who were just there for the party, not for the degree.
Definitely.
It's a weird way to waste money, but whatever.
Yeah.
God. And you mentioned, like, both of you, from a career perspective, you're talking about potentially lecturing alongside this. Is that something both of you are thinking? Yeah, we both kind of want to lecture as well as doing the coaching.
I think we've both come to that conclusion, actually. Yeah.
It's not something that I'm like. It looks like we're just like, oh, you doing that? Like,
yes, pretty much how it comes about, doesn't it?
But it just is kind of like I've done some little bits and bobs, and I've like really thoroughly enjoyed it, and I love the idea of just teaching material that I myself like really enjoy learning about. I really enjoy. Surprising to say because I hated school, but I actually quite enjoy academia when it's subjects that I'm passionate about.
I think it's all in the delivery too, because like you, I wasn't that keen on school, and I excelled as soon as I got into like further education, not even like higher, just further education in college. Did a HND and I fucking excelled. I loved it. Writing 40,000 word assignments and stuff because that's was the dumb thing then. But it's something. I think it's the delivery. The delivery for schools, in my opinion, needs changed. And there's, especially with teenage mental health issues and so on going on now, we need to be looking at personal development courses within schools, even as low as primary schools, like in a really basic sense, a kid-friendly variation. But we need to be looking at that. And I know they do some pastoral care and there's like a mental health person you can go to, but really, how many teens are going to them? There was 7 suicides in my high school when I was there, and it's one of the highest performing in the whole of the UK. I think it's the 3rd highest performing school. Because I went to a really good school, but I just was a lazy. Well, it wasn't lazy. I don't even know what I was, but I wasn't doing great. But there were 7 suicides when I was there, and you think like 2 or 3 in the 1 year, and you think, fucking hell, what's going on with these kids? Are they under that much pressure? Like, is there that much? Does there need to be that much pressure on academia at that age? Surely they don't even fucking know what they're at. I know people who got 11 fucking A stars, who aren't doing anything now. they're burnt out. They're actually burnt out. And then other guys who got 3 C's, a B and an A, who are, you know, they're smashing it. Yeah. Kids that just left school and went into an apprenticeship, they're fucking really having a good time of it now and enjoying their work.
I know a lot of people from my school actually. I didn't go to the greatest school in my area. I loved school. I was very different to you two. I was the SWAT of the class. Like, I loved it. But there's so many students that went on to do apprenticeships, especially in engineering and mechanics and stuff like that, and now like they're doing so well for themselves. So yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah, for going back to the education system, like there are some like really prominent intellectual figures now, and like I know like Elon Musk, Neil deGrasse Tyson, and you know, like quite a few others who are like openly speaking out about like the education system and how it's failing. Like a good portion of, you know, some people go through and excel and do great, but there's plenty of people who get left behind who it's not like they lack potential or anything like that. It's more just the system doesn't work for them, and I can't say how. I don't know if I've got any suggestions about how the education system could be changed. But
to be honest, I think first and foremost, the teachers themselves probably need to be looked after a bit more.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, the system it could be radically changed. I don't think that, people saying, "Oh, how can you change it?" And, you know, for me, that's just all nonsense and excuses. There's money spent elsewhere that could definitely be put into education that would increase the GDP of the country. You know, it would make people more. It would actually increase. I know some people are against immigration. I'm not. Obviously, and I'm technically an immigrant here. I'm an Irish person in England. So, you know, it would attract people to the the education systems here. Now, I know people are already there for, you know, the health service and the education system. So people come here from like Eastern Europe and from from all over the what's the word? Commonwealth. Yeah. So I get that, but it could be even better.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's definitely already things people in like in Norway and Sweden, they're starting to change how they're approaching it, reducing the hours in the day for kids because of more playtime. They're reducing homeworks and so on. And I think homework as a whole thing, I think is a lot of nonsense. Kids, right?
You definitely agree with that, don't you?
I mean, honest to God, like you spend 8 hours in school, right, a day. Now, if you work a job, right, most jobs, now my mum's a lawyer and I've seen her come bring work home, right, but most jobs, but it's because she's passionate about it, right, so most jobs, you go, you do your 8 to 12 hours or whatever, you know, your work shift is, and you come home and it's done. For kids, I know at my school originally, I went in the first year at 11 years old, and I was going 8 hours in the day. Now, bearing in mind, add another 2 hours on for travel up and down, and then another hour if I want to do an after-school club, maybe an hour and a half for an after-school club. So you're talking, you know, 11, 12 hours, fucking exhausted. You get home, and I've actually got to do my other sport, which was Gaelic football at the time. So I was coming home, going to play Gaelic football for an hour and a half, 2 hours, then coming back and having to do 4 hours of homework. At 8 o'clock at night, I haven't even had my dinner. I haven't even had dinner because I can't eat that much before I go and run about a Gaelic pitch. You know, it's not fucking feasible. It's just not sensible. How are kids supposed to do all these things? No fucking wonder some of my friends from that school have burnt out.
Yeah.
No fucking wonder. And they try and they're not thinking forward at all. I know some people come out and they do fantastic. I mean, there's a lot of students that come out of that school who did fantastic and fair play. But I certainly wasn't, you know, I had dyslexia as well, which probably didn't help matters. So taking me doing homework did take fucking far longer than most other people. Maybe they could do it in 2 hours instead of 4, but it took me, you know, I remember doing 4 or 5, well, not 5, but 3-4 hours homework at night, you know, Monday to Friday, and then some on a Sunday when I first started in first year. And it was strange, but my granddad died in my first year at school, and I didn't do any, obviously I was grieving, so I didn't do any homework. I came back into school, and they just asked, have you got your homework done? Not, how are you feeling? Not, none of this. You know, have you got your homework done? No, of course I fucking don't. And so, you know, at that point, that was my switch then. That was that one kind of event, I guess, just changed my whole perspective. I never did another piece of homework after that, the whole way throughout school.
I remember us having a conversation about this exact thing.
It's going on from the teachers then. One I was saying I don't have any solutions, which I guess is not entirely true, because one of the things I've thought about is I think putting a teacher in a classroom with 30, 40, even 50 kids, like how can a teacher take it, have an individual like yourself in a classroom like that, who's clearly, either struggling or just going through something, how can they give them the attention that they need?
It's impossible.
It is impossible. So
the teachers are as much a victim of the system as the pupils are.
100%.
I feel for teachers, I really do.
I do.
Possible.
When I was doing, I still am technically, if lockdown wasn't happening, I was doing supply teaching just before lockdown for a few months. That was really eye-opening. One, the fact that myself, no teaching qualifications at all at this point, was allowed to go into secondary schools and do supply teaching. That blew my mind in of itself. And the reason why I'm classed as a cover supervisor, so I'm basically just a babysitter. I'm not there to teach. I'm just there to this is the work they've asked you to do and go away and do it. Not always was the case, but that was the gist of things. And basically, it really resonated with me just how many hours a teacher puts in, and how little they actually get paid. It's quite ridiculous. So the reason why supply teachers are coming in is not because a teacher's ill. It's because the teachers spent so many hours doing things, covering other people's lessons is one, doing break time duty, marking, etc., that makes their weeks 60 plus, and they just want an hour for a cover supervisor to come in, so that they can just go and mark someone else's work and things like that. It's the system, it's crazy how overworked they are. I was talking to teachers and they said, I was at school from 6 a.m, I'll leave at 6 tonight and I'll have to take all of this back with me. They've got their own family and they're only getting I don't know what the actual average is wage, but it's 21, 23k a year, something. And I was just that's madness. But as well, the students, they see a supply teacher in, we all know, right? Well, this is a DOS lesson, isn't it? And obviously I come in, I haven't got a clue what this lesson is, and I can only do so much to help them. And they know that, I'm not going to beat around the bush either. I walked into an economics class. I don't know economics. What's this about? How I blagged my way through that, I have no idea. But yeah, the system needs adjusting, and I think the funding that they do get needs to be better distributed. I think to help.
Teachers' wages should be a lot higher. If you think, at the end of the day, they're actually by 21,000. Say a teacher, even put it up to 25,000, right? Say you've got a teacher and they've got a partner and 2 kids, and say the teacher's the only one working because they're putting fucking 60-hour weeks in, so there is no time for the other partner to work. They have to look after the kids. Now, how you can manage to sort a family of 4 on 25,000? If anybody figures that out, let me know. I'm paying tax as well, because they're not getting 25,000, are they? They're getting 21 or 20 or whatever.
Yeah.
So, if somebody can figure that out and buy a house and all these other things that you've got to do and have a car and maybe 2 cars, it's just not feasible.
No.
So people are, that's why nurses, teachers, all these essential workers that we've seen in this pandemic, all these essential workers are fucking getting they're getting slaughtered by the system. And they're using things like food banks. It's bonkers, absolutely bonkers that this is happening in this country. It's I don't know.
I agree.
But if you think about this whole, with the country as a collective and a system, certainly those are some of the key fundamental areas that should be improved upon. For sure.
Same thing with the health service, though, isn't it? Nurses and whatnot are doing absolutely stupid hours because they're constantly understaffed and stuff like that. And naturally, they don't end up doing as good a job because they're ridiculously overworked.
And then the NHS gets sued, and then that's an argument to fucking remove it.
Exactly. Like, I don't know if I mentioned to you, but when I saw you a few weeks ago, but I did care work for 5 weeks during lockdown, and I was baffled that I was allowed no qualifications prior, no experience prior. I had to do, I think I did training 1.5 days and some e-learning, and I was able to be a home care support worker, allowed to go by myself as well, and not prescribe but give medicine, and do the care, personal care and stuff like that. And I'm just like, that's baffling that someone as inexperienced and not as qualified as myself is able to go and do that. And it just shows that there's not, I don't know,
they're crying out for workers in that field. My sister, actually, she's both of those roles. She, similar to yourself, she had applied for a teaching position and a care worker's position because obviously she just wanted to work. She's kind of finished her degree and everything now, or going in there last year, sorry, of her degree. But she got both jobs. She got teaching and the thing, so she did the care work up until the teaching started. And, it starts now in September, I think. And she's the same. Like, I think it was a 1 day, wham bam, here you go. That's your, you go and here's what you do now. And just left their own devices. Now, because I guess they're so desperate for those types of people. Well, if you think about it, if the adults, right? So most families now, 2 adults have to work, right? If you have a system where both adults aren't fucking stressed the hell out, right? In a family scenario, then there may be time for looking after a mum, a dad, but there's just no. I mean, if you're working on 2 employed roles, right? Self-employed is a little bit different because if you put the work in at the start, and if you start when you're young, put the work in, then like we were mentioning earlier, you can kind of get to the point where you can do less and make more. Now, that'll work if you want to look after your parents then. But in a lot of cases, 2 parents are working full-time hours, 40, 50, 60 hours a week maybe, and then having to look after kids. They don't have time to look after parents as well, on top of all that. They'll just crack. So that's why then we've generated a system or culture where we need people to go in and give medicines. And, and it's just, really, it's all backward. We're kind of patching up these wounds as they're appearing rather than sorting it out and stopping the wounds happening in the first place. Anyway, we'll just run for government. Fuck it. We just take over.
Oh, I can't imagine. I can't even begin to imagine how difficult. Oh, that must be. Oh, jeez.
I know, but that's true. I mean, imagine trying to deal with that in a real life way. Politicians, they get slated, but actually.
Imagine trying to do their job. Like I say to people, could you imagine being Boris right now? You're all right, thanks.
Yeah, I don't even like the guy, but for what he's done here, and he is doing his best, I believe. I don't think he's put anything but his best out since the start. So I can't complain. Yeah.
What was you gonna say? Sorry.
I was just gonna say, like, regarding the system, like, and then you get to like 60 plus.
I know. Oh, this is what you were gonna say.
You still can't fucking retire because absolutely no chance you'll be able to live.
Yep.
Like both my mum and my dad, like my dad is already like gone. My mum and her partner Em, like they're both going to Portugal because they can actually retire, not work until they're like 75 plus. Because the cost of living is actually like, not insane. And like my mum has done nothing but like work and my stepdad, I've done his job a little bit over lockdown. It's forestry. It is brutal work, like, and I do mean physically demanding. Like, I'm a pretty fit guy. Hauling log fence posts up mountains all day is hard work.
In Wales, just to put that out there, they are actual mountains as well.
Yeah, it's not flatland, is it?
No.
The man's 64 years old and he's still doing it. Like, he's been doing it for 40 odd years. The man needs to retire.
I know.
And if he was to try and do it here, he would either have the choice of being skint or like, you know, keep working. So yeah, they're doing one.
Yep.
But a lot of people that age are now. They're going to countries the cost of living is actually reasonable.
Yeah.
There was a fascinating story I read. I can't even remember where I read it actually, but it was about a woman in her. I think she turned 65. That's what it was, and so they were going to put her. She retired. I think she was actually 70. So she had retired for 5 years. She'd lived at home and so on. But her kids were looking at putting her into a retirement home. So she didn't say nothing. Packed their bags, took a cruise, and never come off the cruise. So she's been cruising because of the cost of putting her in a retirement home. It was cheaper to go on a fucking cruise for the rest of her life.
Tell my parents that. Happy days. They'll love that.
It was actually cheaper. She just cruised, and because she paid for like the years up front, she took a retirement out, paid for the years up front, and she's just been on a cruise since, all over Mediterranean. This cruise company's just taking her everywhere. Like she's having a proper retirement. Like
that's how
you know. And I don't know if you've ever been on a cruise ship, but it's like all you can eat, all you can drink. There's a pool, there's a PT that you don't have to pay if you want to go and do a PT session. It's fucking amazing. Like I was on one cruise ship and it was a great experience. Definitely something that people should do. Yeah, I find that funny. Like she was pretty smart. I mean, her kids were like, we had no idea. You know, they said afterwards it was great that she did that, but at first they were a bit annoyed because they'd gone through all the processes setting everything up for her. You know, I don't know, it's crazy. Yeah, that was great. Will we wrap it up or what we think?
Unless you've got any other topics you want to
delve into, yeah.
Any more world problems to solve?
I know.
Yeah, we nearly fixed the whole planet there, so we did, but
I know.
just falling that much short. I think what I'm going to do actually in future, because and I done this last time and I thought the same thing last time. I don't know why I done it again, but here we are. I need to probably get a session with each of these individually, actually, because these are both have so much, I think, to share and so much to give. And I need to kind of pick out what to ask each of these individually on an individual basis. So what I'll probably do in the future at some point is bring you both back on your own, comfortable.
Cool. Sounds good.
Because it'd be interesting. Because like I'd like to delve more into Ryan, your kind of journey and transition from weightlifting and strength sports and so on into jiu-jitsu and the combat sports, and get into the nitty-gritty and the little nutrition things. And I think people would like be fascinated by that. I know I would be. And likewise, Bobbie, I think like, you know, looking at the almost the elite mindset and so on of trying to get on that podium, and because we didn't really talk about what the experience was on the platform. Are you fired up? Are you calm? Is there, you know, what's that balance? You know, so I think that's just two you can think of off the top of my head, but
yeah,
I think what I'll do is we'll come on for another session at some point and get into each of these individually as well.
Sounds really good. Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah, sweet. So anything to add? I guess we'll call it that.
I'm not going.
No, I don't.
Well,
think so.
Thanks very much for coming on, guys. It's been fantastic.
It was great to catch up.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
Definitely, and I'll definitely have you both on again in the future.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having us on today.
Yeah, nice one, man.
No problem. My pleasure. Thank you.